Hello and welcome to another episode of Black Lagoon Reviews. I'm Brian. Some might say the Little John of our podcast.
I'm Nicholas Alexander Hacks, but some call me Big John.
And this here is, I guess, our little love affair that we call Black Lagoon Network. I guess that's like the idealized version of this show, right? We're just wandering around our peaceful domestic life in the blood-soaked house of Michael Myers.
This is my third time watching the movie. To preface how violent this movie is, I've had moms ask me, should I take my little ones to go see this movie? Because I was thinking about it. I immediately said, no, this is
a bizarre question. This isn't A Quiet Place. This isn't PG-13 horror, you know? It's a whole other level.
I told her, no.
I mean, let's take a moment to think about how cool it is that even if you love or hate these movies, we are living in a historical horror moment where this is an attempt to revive and kind of end the Halloween franchise. God knows that nobody who's making money off it will truly end it, but the pretense here is that they're going to end it with Halloween Kills, and we're here right in the middle of it. We're experiencing it in real time. It's kind of a blast to cover it.
End it. I feel like they're closing the Laurie Strode story. I feel like...
which this is getting into some speculation that we should definitely unwrap in guts, because I'm interested in, where is Halloween Kills even going? But before we get into that, as always, let's do our quick spoiler-free reviews. Nick, do you want to start us off?
Sure, why not? I'd be delighted to. This movie has its issues. No movie is flawless. Writing-wise and character development-wise, I felt could have used some work. I felt like the writing is really weak, and there needed to be more to be substantive and to hold more weight in this world. The kills in this movie are phenomenal, with the exception of one kill. And I think with the exception of one kill, overall, I have to say I am excited to see the conclusion in Halloween Ends. 1,000 stars out of 10.
Oh my god. Wait, the final cut. Out of place.
End it.
Yeah, do stick around for our final cut segment, because I have no idea how I'm even going to try to quantify my feelings about this movie. I'm trying to force myself to make it up on the spot, so we'll see. All right, look, elephant in the room. People will notice that in our reaction, I truly had fun with this movie. I was kind of beaming with joy the entire time. I thought this was actually a truly fun film, but make no mistake, it is a popcorn movie, right? It's part 2 in a 3-part attempt to resurrect the Halloween franchise. And that by itself makes it really interesting, because we're living in horror movie history, but now this is Black Lagoon Reviews and we're in critic mode. So we can't just, we got to look at the film a little bit differently. Halloween 2018 and Halloween Kills, still, my verdict, misunderstands the spirit of the 1978 classic. Or they are trying to do something exciting and modernize it, and I just feel like they're not doing it the right way. One of those two things is true. Either way, I'm not too happy with the tone. What was a dark and ominous film about evil just coming in and disrupting the beauty of suburban life? They're reducing that into just a guy who's almost fleshing out his own lore. And it almost feels Marvel-like, where it doesn't become about world building and look, this character's back and that one's back and he was doing this at that time, and it comes down to this. It's like a fandom movie almost, where it's trying to build up a lore, and it isn't anymore about a man transforming himself through his crimes into the manifestation of evil. And because of that, I am left conflicted on this movie. Because of it, I liked it. Watching it with you was a blast. It's a popcorn film. It's a party film. It's got shock. It's got story. It's got all the stuff you want out of a theater experience. But I have to be fair. If I watched this detached from the Halloween name, if this was just a new Blumhouse movie, I would have walked out of the theater and thought it was forgettable. And I'm going to break that down to guts. Curveball.
Guts to the film.
Guts of the film. Yeah, we're going right into it.
I have to say, I kind of agree with you. If you were to detach this movie from the Halloween franchise, this wouldn't have been memorable at all. But there, like, and again, there are so many references that flew over your head, and I know they flew over your head because you didn't see the sequels. We immediately get thrown right back to 1978, where well, actually, no, we don't. Not immediately. We first start off with Cameron, which I loved his character in this movie.
They played down the teen drama, which I thought in the first in 2018 was such a misfire.
It's such a mess.
And here they were like, no, all right, let's knock that out and make this a film about tragedy and terror. And it's like, yeah, that's what it needed to be. And you were referencing the 1978 sequence. That was so well done. The 1978 sequence to this film, the callback to Halloween Night from the original film, I actually really, really liked. I thought it was done with so much subtlety, and it was ominous. The brooding soundtrack, the grainy footage, it felt like they know what they're doing. It felt great.
I love the fact that they found somebody who looked somewhat like Loomis and then used prosthetics on his face to turn him into fucking Loomis. And I'm like,
it was so good.
I about fucking teared up.
The part of the beauty of that scene is it felt like we were seeing like forbidden footage. Like for all of this time in the Halloween franchise, we're just like, hold on, this we never got to see the rest of this night. I mean, I think there are other movies that expand on that, but we never got to see the rest of this film. Like this movie where it ended, and now this film is saying, hey, look, here's what happened the second after the camera shut off. And it was such an exciting thing to look behind the curtains and for them to have not tried to modernize it. This was not George Lucas putting CGI aliens into the original Star Wars movies. This was a really faithful extension of an amazing movie, and they did it and nailed the tone. They nailed the tone.
Right.
I was really excited about that. And then they modernized the movie. But it was a very respectful way of extending the movie. And I just thought they killed it. It was amazing. Really well done.
I loved it. I agree. I felt that Loomis's accent was just
I picked up on that a tiny bit too. Yeah.
Teensy-weensy bit off, but you can't win them all. I loved it. Even though it kind of just felt a little shoveled in. But it was nice to have him back. I'm not complaining whatsoever. Just
in case we have viewers who saw this a while ago or are watching this but don't want to watch the movie, Nick, do you want to give us like a kind of a quick overview of what Halloween 2018 was like and how this extended the story?
Okay, so Halloween 2018 was the soft reboot sequel to the great John Carpenter's 1978 film Halloween. Michael Myers has been imprisoned for over 40 years after that fateful night, and Laurie Strode having to deal with her trauma and PTSD, alcoholism, losing custody of her daughter, and it's sort of like building up to the ultimate climax of Michael Myers versus Laurie Strode.
That is, I think, an important part of 2018 because they did something that was a very good idea, which is, Halloween night happened back then, and this is the consequence of it decades later. So Laurie Strode has changed, paranoia, right? She's just devastated by what happened, hasn't been able to get over it. Haddonfield has not been able to drop this like dark legacy, and Michael Myers is seemingly still just staring out of that bedroom window. Like when he comes back to Haddonfield, it's just like he's always been this force of evil. Like nothing has really changed for him. He's just been patient, and it's just the idea behind that movie was really great, but the execution was very much trying to appeal to teenagers, and it felt very lighthearted and yeah.
There were jokes that fell flat. There were a lot of lines that felt like they could have been tweaked. Like they were just building up to the big climatic showdown.
And now I know why they held back, because that wasn't the showdown. Now we kind of know that first film was setting the stage, not very effectively, I don't think, and building us up, putting all the chess players in place so in kills it can be unleashed, and then by the final film it's a 1v1 with the duo, right? That's been decades, and now they're going face to face. And the reaction I was talking about, how this feels like a Star Wars or Dune style trilogy, where you don't have the whole story if you just read one part of it or watch one movie of it. You get a tiny bit of it, and it has an end, but it's not the true end because all of it is in service of a broader trilogy arc. You know, you read Dune and then you stop it, and then you're like, oh, it was a good book. It's like, well, you didn't get to the darkest part of it, which is the third book. You watch Star Wars and you don't get to the end of it, which is the true arc of what's happening in the Empire. This is hopefully the same way, where we don't like the micro stories, but we might like the macro story. I want to love the macro story when Halloween Ends comes out. I want to be all for it.
I heard there's going to be a huge tonal shift in Kills, and I heard it's going to divide a lot of people. So there's...
That's the best news I could hear.
Jamie Lee Curtis said it herself.
Yeah,
I'm pretty. At least I'm. Don't quote me on that, because I'm pretty sure I read that somewhere and I might have been drunk.
That makes me feel like they're going to do a big swing and it's not going to be fan service, and that makes me think they might make the right choice. So I'm all for it. I like terribly dark, bleak endings.
I do too.
I think that might be the refreshing thing I need to hear to really get excited about Halloween Ends. Because I'll be honest, to briefly recap this kind of review of 2018. 2018 did not win me over at all. There were moments of it that I liked, but I did not see how they would do a trilogy. Halloween Kills, to be frank. I might be lukewarm about the movie. Hey there. But this was a kind of a triumph of a popcorn movie. Like, as far as it being entertainment value and understanding what it is they're trying to do and overlooking some stuff, it was kind of a triumph of an entertainment horror thriller. And it makes me excited to see what Ends might be, because I think they finally figured out the tone that they need, and that they didn't have in 18. They didn't really have it in Kills. I think they know where they need to go for the last one. And I want that macro story to absolutely kill it. I'm ready for it. I'm ready for it.
Wholeheartedly excited. Can't wait.
And with that said, we just watched part 2 of this trilogy. So we're going to get into... Halloween Kills in our thoughts on it.
I hated the social commentary on mob mentality.
It was so forced. It's like, all right, thank you, ye philosophers who wrote Halloween Kills, for telling us that big groups of angry people might be unsafe. Like, wow, we needed to hear that. Thanks.
I have a philosophical boner right now, just waiting to burst, full of knowledge. Full of DNA knowledge. Ew.
It was so like ham-fisted, like oh, they're gonna love this. We're making this film relevant.
Oh
it's like
God, it's so cool.
Such a lame.
It's gonna be so fucking awesome. Just, but it made no sense to me. The people that confuse this other guy, how? He was talking too. He was asking for help, and everyone's like, "Fuck you! That's Michael Myers. Kill him!" Like, I'm gonna confuse Brian as Adolf Hitler, and I'm like, "Oh my God, it's Hitler! Kill him!"
I do think that is a good example, not the Hitler thing. I do think that is a good example of the writing, because the writing, it also had its highs. Like we talked about the 1978 sequence, which I thought was just almost masterfully done. But yeah, they do devolve into these like weird sequences.
I like that they brought a lot of side characters from 2018 that didn't really have a lot of screen time and brought them back into this movie, and it really brings Haddonfield to life. You feel the city, you feel the people, the townspeople.
That's a good point. Yeah, I kind of saw the constant callbacks and secondary castings as kind of gimmicky, but I think you're right. In the second movie, it actually feels like a town, in a town where people know each other in a way that even the first Halloween didn't feel like that. I think there is some success there.
I will say, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I will say what does feel gimmicky is, and this is my least favorite part about the movie, it felt so gimmicky to bring back all these reoccurring characters from the original 78 film. It was nice to have them, but they get killed off so fucking fast. And now that I say that out loud, I don't know how I feel. It's unceremonious.
Yeah.
It's very unceremonious, but
and not in like a tasteful way that's like showing you how dark reality can be.
Not,
it's just kind of like bad writing.
Like, this is for Loomis. Hey, Michael, this is for Loomis. And then you die. You end your story arc with a whimper and a fucking fart.
It is that there are really frustrating parts of this movie that often come down to a lot of the Haddonfielders have fallen into this like hubris, but there's no reason why they would have. Mob mentality is not an explanation for all of the other scenes outside of the hospital. They're living in the shadow of this terrible killer who is immortally strong, and they're still facing off with him one-on-one, like they might finally be the ones to do him over. It's just not going to happen. It isn't well explained. It isn't well written. It's there for the cheap tension, and that's kind of where I fall away from the movie. And while I already talked about some of the parts that I think it did well, the entertainment value was totally there. I had a lot of fun watching this. One of the weaker parts of the writing is when you look at what they understand as the true and traditional tone of Halloween in the 78 sequence that they did at the beginning, and then what their modern sequence is to introduce us to these characters in the bar. It is so clear that they don't think the modern audience wants to sit through tension and dread and metaphors of just evil manifesting itself in a neighborhood and just plowing down every single domestic hurdle. But we do want that. The horror movies that are successful and celebrated are that. What we don't need is this weird operatic bar sequence where people are singing and dancing and there are colors and weird dialogue and weird jokes that don't land and weird wish fantasy characters and then forced exposition.
I want you to punch your fucking boss in the face. Like,
yeah, it's like
this girl needs to go.
We can't. It's like, again, I was saying it in the reaction. It's like the writers and everyone involved in this feel like, yeah, but now the modern audience can't sit still for more than 10 minutes. It's blatantly not true. People who make films for Hollywood think it's true, but it really isn't. This was the weakest and least interesting way to introduce these characters. Did it lead to some good scenes? Yes, but it was not executed well.
It wasn't. The writing it really needed work.
And really quickly, because I think you'll like this is the type of movie that makes me look back and really respect You're Next. Because that was the movie that also had a colorful cast of characters. All of them were like had a thing. Each one was a gimmick. But the dialogue and interactions work. There we go. So I wish they took note of how a movie can be so seamless and tell its story well, even if it's just an entertaining thriller horror film. And you can do that with great characters in this chess-like writing mentality of everyone has its place. If you introduce a shotgun in Act 1, it has to be fired by Act 3. Like that type of writing where there's nothing wasted. You're Next did that, right? And this is a good example of another very operatic, colorful, flamboyant movie that fails to be worth all of its own fuss. That said, let's talk about some of the things that were good and interesting to us.
My favorite characters, Big John and Little John.
They actually were like a really charming little addition.
I loved them so much. This is fucking goals right here. Yes. So they're realtors, and they couldn't get anybody to buy the Myers house. So they just settled on it and just fucking took the house for themselves and made it beautiful.
Is one of the ideas. Yeah, I actually think this idea works because some of the tension in this film is figuring out what happened to these decades-old structures that we saw in the first film. These people and these structures in these places. I like finding out that this hell house was bought for close to nothing, renovated and made into this little perfect dream suburbia home, and that people have been living in that horror in the most pleasant, and charming way possible, and that it has just been a place filled with joy for years.
Right.
There's kind of a subversiveness to that reminded me of Last House. I was kind of telling you about this in reaction, because it is kind of like we're seeing these terrible sequences of, and we'll get to it next, the incredible animalistic brutality of Michael Myers in this movie alone. And then we're cutting straight to this charming couple in this charming house, and then they zoom out and we find out it's Myers' home. To me, that works. That works for the same reason Last House worked. And it was a big swing, and thank God that didn't fall flat, because that would be such a disappointing addition to the lore if it felt like they had tainted the Halloween house, right? But they pulled it off. I thought it was really well done.
I agree. This is where it comes in. Big John's kill, his death scene, while brutal, that stab in the armpit gets me every time. Oh my god. The eyeball squeeze looked off. Did you notice that?
Oh no, I was too terrified that it was happening, but I didn't take it in. Maybe if I watch it again.
Yeah, I don't know why, but it looked goofy. But overall, like, you get what you get, you know. I'm not gonna complain all that much, but I just felt like it could have been done so much better, especially with all the other wonderful special effects scenes, including Loomis, which is kind of funny because I'm over here gushing. I'm gushing about Halloween Kills, whereas in our previous review for Halloween 78, I felt
please go watch it.
So mixed and so just drained of excitement, and it kind of makes me want to go back and watch 78.
One thing I really want to bring up is again on the brutality of this movie. One thing that I appreciated is that in the 78 sequence, it wasn't only a tool. It was also kind of setting the stage, and I think an effective way to make the rest of Halloween Kills, the modern day portion, better. And one of the ways is the one time we do see Michael Myers in that 78 sequence, he is lightning fast. It's like they took the original film literally, where Michael Myers was there and then suddenly he's behind you. It's like a supernatural ability, and this film decided to let you peek behind the scenes and see how fast he is. It isn't implied by him popping up behind you. You watch him move quickly. You can see that he's just this animalistic, angry force of nature.
Right.
And then the other great thing is where he just disappears. In the first film, he just vanishes, or just like wanders off out of frame. In this movie, they will let you watch him walk out of frame and watch his back as he's just getting shot and shot and shot. And it's just such a cool sequence where they took it literally. They took the film mechanic of him just walking into the shadows literally, and we actually watched him walking away and getting just, barraged with bullets. I think that's great. It really made him look like the myth he has become. And I love that idea. And then the real kicker is when the modern version of this movie takes place, the rest of the film, he's heavy and slow and brutal. Like, that animalism is still in him, but he's older. And now, instead of zipping around, he's moving slowly and methodically, and he is letting these kills linger. He is slower as a person, and he is killing people and taking his time. It isn't just he stabs the guy into the armpit and then puts his finger in his eyes. He stabs him, lets him suffer, jams his eyes in once, and then you're like, oh, that was terrible. And then he does it again deeper, like down to the knuckle.
I'm pretty sure.
And then he does it like...
I'm pretty sure the lingering also comes from the 1978 film, where you remember Annie Brackett, when the first victim in the movie, where she's being choked and then like slowly, and then he takes his knife and then he slits her throat, and then she slowly bleeds out.
And I love these moments in Halloween where, because he is someone so void of any character or motive, we are scanning everything he does for something that explicates his personality. And we get that through his actions. And they're like at the ending Halloween with that ritual sequence made him this weird symbolic killer, like this terrifying Ed Gein-like character. In this movie, we do get these little moments where we see something of his personality. The fact that he didn't go to the hospital, but he went back to his home, and he wasn't in a constant obsession with Laurie Strode. He was in an obsession with reliving that night at his house. It wasn't even really unfinished business. It was like he just wants to be back. He is just being pulled ceaselessly back to that little locus of evil. It's a really cool idea that he's just wandering to his house forever, and that he isn't just obsessed with a teenager who slipped out of his grips. I like seeing that insight into him, and they played it off well. There's another characteristic that they were giving us in this movie, that he is more playful than he appeared in the first film. And I thought even that was pulled off pretty well. There's a moment where he just keeps stabbing a dead guy in the back with like new knives. Like he's just like experimenting with something.
That scene, that entire sequence was one of my favorite sequences in this movie. I loved how Okay, comparison from 2018 to this movie. 2018, Michael Myers was more stabby stab.
Yeah.
Than anything. Like, he used different kinds of tools and stuff. Yeah, okay. This one, he's more like, I'll take your fucking head and bash it through that fucking wall. You come into my house. Let me tell you.
And then bash it through the wall, and then through the window, and then use the shard of glass to cut his throat, and then again, and then again, and then again, and then eventually throw him over a dining room table.
And he's not even
Stick
dead.
A knife in his back.
He's
still living. He's still going and screaming.
And then he goes.
Then we follow his wife for a while, and then we find out that guy's still alive, being just turned into like this whatever those things are that you put the needles
I loved how he took that fluorescent light tube.
Oh my god!
Broke it and just plunged it right into her fucking throat, and it filled up, and she's like, so intense and so grotesque.
Yeah. When you watch a horror movie and people are being stabbed to death, normally when it's happening, it just looks like a knife is just like popping into someone, popping out, and then they fall over dead. In reality, unfortunately, the human body is a pneumatic system of blood. We're alive as long as blood's flowing through our brain. We can see and feel. And you realize that when you're stabbed, you don't die. You slowly leak to death. And you feel all of it. When you get your head cut off even, you don't just die. There's still blood running through your brain for a few seconds. It's kind of like really gritty. The fact that is no symbolic thing that just kills us and we're just, we're over. It's like, no, we have to leak to death. And this movie felt like you're leaking to death. It had the grit and the gravity of people who really knew how to make a death scene immeasurably horrible.
I feel like this movie kind of comes out on top for the majority of slashers because of
that's an interesting way of looking at it.
Because of how, first of all, how grotesque the kills are and how long the kills are. It's not just a quick dead. And I'm surprised that we saw a lot of the scenes that we saw this day and age.
Sure. Yeah.
Fucking grotesque, dude. Oh my god.
At the same time, you know what? This is interesting. We have become a culture desensitized to gore. Violence doesn't really bother anybody anymore. In fact, like all of the most kind of like the big mainstream hits are all super Game of Thrones, Walking Dead. Like we aren't in an I Love Lucy world anymore. Now what it means to just like mainstream television is to constantly be inundated with violence and sex. And this movie was kind of like, what is it going to take to shock this generation? I kind of feel like they nailed it. Like there were sequences in here.
They really did a good job. I felt
were like psychologically destructive.
Uncomfortable. I felt uncomfortable. I really fucking felt uncomfortable. That light tube. Oh my god. I love that little twirl she does when she's dying. It's like, wee.
Great little moment.
Like I would have loved a little spray just to sputter as she's
I was
spinning.
waiting for him to take the tube and empty out all the blood. I was waiting for that moment, but they didn't. I kind of appreciated the subtlety that you only know it's filling up with blood if you listen to it. And it sounds like someone's pouring their Brita water filter into a bottle. It's just like, go, 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 go. And then it's like, oh, wow. Oh, yeah, there's something we need to talk about. This movie, again, Laurie Strode was not the main character. I think it was a good choice. She was out of order. Not for lack of trying. She was sitting in a hospital bed the entire movie. This is all about building tension and clearing the chessboard for what I think is going to be the big 1v1. I thought it worked. I kind of didn't like that Laurie Strode became a cartoon character in Halloween 2018. It felt a bit
I didn't necessarily think that she became a cartoon character as more of a fucking victim who's been traumatized into thinking that this guy has been incarcerated for 40 years, but he's going to come after me.
Yeah.
Which, I'm not sure where she got that inclination of he's going to come back for me. Like, I'm the one that got away.
Yeah.
Because that doesn't really necessarily make sense then.
It kind of works with the movie in the sense that what I feel like Halloween is a guy stabbing his way into becoming just the embodiment of evil. Like he lost his humanity and killed his way to just becoming what Loomis kept talking about was just like this vague sense of dread and death. And it kind of feels like she was scared of him because he made himself into a myth. And now he was just like constantly hanging over Haddonfield, and it just felt like he was going to return home, as if. But like, yeah, I agree. Like, we didn't see enough of his psychology in the first film to really get an idea that he's like constantly trying to repeat Halloween Day. We kind of did from Loomis, but I agree. Yeah, maybe that the link there could have been made a bit clearer. And I like the idea that she's really paranoid now. That works very well. I think they handled it in more of a Wes Craven way, when I wish they handled it in more of a John Carpenter way. In the end of Halloween Kills, when I wonder if this is a successful movie. Well, before I even get into that, I want to get into another main plot point, which is, so at the end of this movie, Michael Myers is surrounded by a vigilante mob of Haddonfielders who are sick of him, and they're ready to take him out. And unfortunately, this isn't necessarily a scene of carnage and catharsis where we just see blood and violence and they start wailing on Michael Myers. It is that until the writing suffers and what should have been an amazing, fun sequence is made frustrating by the recurring issue of everybody knows that Michael Myers is a myth and a legend and indefeatable, but nobody cares to stab him when he's down. Everybody knows he always comes back, but nobody cares to actually do the job and kill him when he finally has his back to them.
So I feel there are multiple scenes where there is a gaggle of people, gaggle of people going face to face against Michael Myers. My main issue with these huge again, it all comes from the writing. Is it's kind of funny because I'm looking at it and it's like a kung fu movie where all like you got this the main protagonist versus all these people and they're all coming at you one by one.
Yeah.
One by one. Makes no fucking sense. Like, your friend's being impaled right now and you're just gonna sit there and watch. Your friend's currently being cut in half. You know, everybody's fucking stupid because they have to be in order for Michael Myers to survive. Otherwise, he would just be a leg and a head.
Yeah, what I wish this was a demystifying of Michael Myers. He was a myth. In 2018, he was a subtle, realistic, brutal machine. In this movie, we saw behind the scenes. We saw his brutal process of killing people, and then it would have culminated in this perfect little masterpiece scene where he's literally out in the wide open, not hiding, not hunting, in a group of people, and he is still capable of just slaughtering all of them while taking as many bats and knives to the body as he can. I wish that's how they handled it. Instead, one by one, people came up and kind of whacked him around for a bit. Wouldn't it have been cooler if there were just bats and knives slamming all over him, and he on his just beaten to all hell is still just limping around, murdering, slashing, killing everything he can because his only motivation is just to kill, right? Like that's all he has in him anymore.
I love how he's causing all this chaos. And the only thing that I like about the mob mentality social commentary is, you know, when disaster happens, we will do anything to fucking like if there was a serial killer out there murdering family members, terrorizing a town, we would
eerily reminiscent of the Night Stalker, who was literally stopped by a neighborhood. Richard Ramirez was literally stopped by vigilantes in a neighborhood, chasing him down, tackling him to the ground in the middle of the street, and doing him in, bringing him to the police. There is a vigilante justice element to it,
which but you know fails. led by Tommy himself, which I forget his name, the actor's name. He did a really good job, but he also came off as a bit douchey. But I love the dynamic of, you know, him talking to Laurie Strode, being like, you know, you protected me all those years ago. Now it's my turn to protect you.
Yeah.
And it's so bittersweet when he goes. And it makes me sad because I'm like, the boogeyman got you. He ended up getting you one way or another. He could have gotten you as a kid, but 40 years down the road, all grown up, had plenty of time to start a family or whatever the fuck you did, and settle down for a 401k, and just you're dead, gone in the blink of an eye.
This brings me to my final writer's crutch that I've been kind of hinting at the whole time and kind of already said it. The moments in this movie that should be the most powerful were frustrating. Nothing should ever be annoying or frustrating. If that happens in your movie, it really takes you out of it.
Right.
And all of the moments where Michael had his back turned, his face to the ground, lying lifeless and still, nobody plunged in the knife a second time. He got a pike in the back. He fell. He got curb stomped over on the floor. Nobody thought to put the pitchfork through his neck 10 times until his head just falls off of his impossibly strong body. Instead, they stabbed him once, watched him fall, backed up, and literally waited for him to come back, and then ran away. And it's just like, come on. I could deal with it once or twice, but it happens all the way up to the end.
Once, maybe.
Yeah.
2 times is too much.
Sure.
3 times you're telling me to go fuck myself, and I suggest you sit there and let that one marinate. If you
really think about it, picture it.
If you get that reference, I know Brian didn't, but I love Letterkenny. Anyways, I would have loved if somebody kept going. Just kept going, and then Michael was just like, enough, grabs you by the arm, breaks your fucking arm, takes your
I
fucking...
want a knife to break in somebody's hand because they're stabbing him so hard, and then him to turn around and just do him in.
Something. I feel like Michael Myers' mask is what is forcing him to kind of keep going, if anything. And I would love if David Gordon Green were to connect Season of the Witch to this to this trilogy, and have the Myers mask actually be a silver shamrock mask. And I know you don't know what I'm talking about, Brian. We'll get to that when we watch Season of the Witch. My prediction of how this next movie is going to start. The daughter is still downstairs, by the way, mind you. There's police, there's ambulance and everything. He murdered the mother. Now, all of a sudden, they're going to notice, oh shit, he's there. He's standing out, like, get him. And then he's going to fucking slaughter these fucking cops. And then the daughter is going to be in the back of the ambulance. One of the ambulance drivers is going to be like, go, 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 and fucking drives off to the hospital. And that is where Michael Myers follows the ambulance and goes straight to the Memorial Hospital, Haddonfield Memorial Hospital. And that is where the movie takes place. And then we get this big, huge battle between Laurie Strode and Michael Myers. Michael Myers ends up killing Laurie. She's dead. The granddaughter survives. Now, we can go either way. We could say that, they end up thinking that they killed Michael, and then somehow years later he comes back, and the granddaughter is now having to prepare, and she's prepared already because of the traumatic events. And then there's going to be like this huge, like, again, another battle or whatever. I think that's how it's going to play out in my head.
I feel like the ending there, it's very possible that they are going to do that. I wouldn't like if they did, because I feel like it would be repeating the mistakes of Halloween 2018 when they really shouldn't be doing that.
Right.
But I'm imagining a devastated hospital that has been overrun by this crazy violent mob. The power is flickering in and out. Myers is going in there and just taking out all the electronics, and it's just this tense cat and mouse game through the hospital. I could see some amazing sequences coming out of a movie like that. I'd be here for it. So yeah, I mean, I don't have something that granular as far as prediction goes. It's very clear that these first two movies were setting the stage for this famous one-on-one, and that there's a reason they didn't really give us that in the first movie. The first movie's conflict was more of a running away from the indomitable force. This final one is going to be an actual showdown, I think. And now the stakes are higher than they've ever been, where literally a significant portion, I would imagine, of Haddonfield is gone.
Holy shit. We've been talking in the guts this entire time.
It's an hour 15 minutes.
All right, let's get straight to the eulogy.
The eulogy.
All right.
We're never going to talk about Halloween Kills again. How are we going to lay it to rest, Nick?
Well, I don't know if we can, Brian. It just won't die. No. I guess I shot it 6 times.
Yeah, that's kind of the one to go to.
And it falls off the roof, and then I look over, and it's gone. Cut to credits. All right. Since that's done,
all right. We'll see you in Halloween. We'll see you in the eulogy of Halloween Ends, when the puppy of the dog who was eaten comes back and kills Michael Myers. And it ends with the dog eating Myers. Yeah, it's actually a crossover, so it's actually Beast from Hills Have Eyes.
Okay, so let's get straight to the eulogy.
We already did that. Let's get straight to
the eulogy.
Wait, are you hearing voices? Nick, what did IMDb think about this movie? It's famed for its even-handedness.
This one was posted by J. Tinda House on the 15th of October, 2021. Gave it 4 stars out of 10. Titled it Awful Characters and Adds Nothing to the Halloween Universe. Which, there's some debate there. I feel like it adds on to the Michael Myers mythos without oversharing too much. We get like nice little nitpicks of his personality. Okay, so Halloween Kills is the definition of a sequel for the sake of making a sequel, or more accurately, the sake of making money. It is not. It not only adds nothing to the story, it destroys some of the good things from the 2018 version. I've been looking forward to this movie for a long time with the COVID delays, and I sadly have to say it was not worth the wait at all. Oh yeah, the COVID delays. This was supposed to be out last year.
Oh wow.
And we were supposed to get Ends this year, but that didn't happen. The characters in this movie were atrocious. Firstly, they destroyed Laurie Strode. Not only does she do absolutely nothing in this movie, she is rude to kind nurses and assaults a doctor. Yep, that'll get us on her side, but that wasn't even the worst of it. The side characters they created for this film were embarrassing. There was a scene where a character just stares at Michael Myers, says something to the effect of, "Michael, you've come home," and then just stands there and waits to be killed, which I thought was hilarious as well. That's the worst That's the worst example of it. But this is very much a rinse and repeat thing throughout the film. The pacing of the film is all over the place too. There's a very strange and uninteresting opening scene. Then we get a couple of admittedly great scenes with the firefighters in a house with a couple. At this point, I was having a good time with. At this point, I was having a good time. Michael was ferocious and in no mood to mess around, which I loved. Then we hit a wall and frankly never recovered. Even at the end, when the film should be building up to the big conclusion, it feels like it's stuck in first gear. Also, there's a subplot involving a mental patient that is just unpleasant. It's not scary, it's not clever, it's just depressing and unnecessary, and quite insulting to the audience that we are expecting to buy it. I didn't find much to enjoy about this film, sadly. It looks great, and the start was decent. Otherwise, though, it's not one I recommend. 4 out of 10.
4 out of 10. That's another example of him making some really good points, and I feel like the only reason I'm not coming at this film as critically as he did is because I actually thought it was a fun movie.
I liked a lot of people hated the fact that Laurie Strode wasn't in the movie as long as we were led to believe because of the trailers. The trailers led us to believe that she was gonna be in the movie a lot longer. It's like there was a scene in the trailer. It was like Michael, and the hospital. It's like, oh, we're gonna get this big.
Oh yeah.
Like, I don't like the way that they do trailers now. It should be short, sweet, simple. Doesn't show too much. Gives you some sort of idea of what we're gonna get. And leave it to the imagination. Let the people figure it out. We're not stupid. We're not. We can do this.
We can do it. Yeah, I think that's a good point. All right.
Does Ebert have something to say? I'm sure he loved this movie.
Famously nicknamed Raj Scare Ibu in our Halloween review. This is Brian Tallarico, editor and contributor to Roger Ebert's website, because unfortunately, you just say stuff at Nick without emoting, and it just destroys him. Roger Ebert, of course, is passed, but his legacy lives on in other film critics. Brian Tallarico, he had some interesting points about this film coming from the Roger Ebert website. He says, oh boy. My feelings about David Gordon Green's reboot of Halloween in 2018 was that the talented director fundamentally misunderstood what worked about John Carpenter's original, draining the project of actual tension, despite a few solid set pieces. Yeah, it's fair. Having seen his follow-up Halloween Kills, I think I was right. This film muddies its entire concept with a bizarre, unrefined commentary on mob mentality that is quite simply some of the worst material in either Green's career or the history of this Rocky franchise. On that point, Roger Ebert wrote the following about the first Halloween 2, back in 1981. The plot of Halloween 2 absolutely depends on our old friend the idiot plot, which requires that everyone in the movie behave at all times like an idiot. It's almost as if co-writers Green, Danny McBride, and Scott Teems had this quote on a whiteboard in the writer's room because this was the aspect they most got right when it comes to being faithful to the first two movies. Everyone in Halloween Kills is wildly idiotic. In films like Halloween Kills, when a film like Halloween Kills is working, the audience will ignore the idiot plot. It's only when they're not invested that it becomes a problem, and that's the case here. Hold on. He's not done tearing this movie up. Halloween Kills, also, these are kind of points that you were making subtly. He's just a lot more mean about it. It's kind of interesting. Halloween Kills follows the classic sequel formula of, again, but more of it. However, all of it keeps pulling the movie away from the story of a boogeyman who came to life and became something else entirely. We have seen so many variations of Michael Myers over the years, from Carpenter's to Rob Zombie's to all of the various sequels in between. I'm most startled that an undeniably talented director like David Gordon Green made, barring an impressive recovery in the already greenlighted Halloween Ends, what will be one of the franchise's most forgettable. And that is how he ends his review. He gave it 2 out of 4 stars.
You know, he made a lot of fair points, and a lot of those points I talked about as well. But I enjoyed this movie. I had fun with it. I can have issues with movies and still come out on the other side and having a good time with it. I would definitely rewatch this movie. Definitely. But overall, we can't necessarily judge it on the basis of just it being a film. We have to wait until the last movie, and then, not only then, we have to combine all three together with our overall thoughts on David Gordon Green's Halloween trilogy. Can't wait. So without further ado, let's get straight to
the final cut.
The final cut.
This is what it's all been coming down to. We've been recording this. I don't know how short the review will be, but right now we've been recording this for an hour and a half.
I think that there should be 2 versions. There should be a Patreon version, which is the full-length, unedited version.
Oh, interesting. Sure.
And then the YouTube version, which is, a bit shorter.
I like that idea. Interesting. Okay, we'll think about that. Now our job is to turn all of those mixed, conflicted feelings into a quantifiable score, which we will then put up against our rating for Halloween 2018, which we have yet to rate.
I have this knife.
Oh, no. And let's start with a very, very fast rating of Halloween 2018. What is just your gut feeling? What should you rate that movie?
I'm giving it a 6 out of 10 slashes. There's just not enough for me to be like... Granted, I watch this movie over and over again because because I enjoy watching it, but it just feels so lackluster, and the writing suffers. It suffers so much because of it.
Yeah.
When we get to the last sequence, it's like 10 out of 10 right there. I loved it. But I give it 6 out of 10 slashes.
That's Halloween 2018.
Yes.
A 6 out of 10. I am giving Halloween 2018 a solid 5. I won't go too far into why, but I really, truly feel like the best parts of that movie were just overwhelmed by weak writing and frustrating moments.
And now, Halloween Kills, everybody. My verdict. I'm giving it an 8. A solid fucking 8.
Wow.
I loved the carnage so
Wonderful.
much. I loved how Michael Myers carried this entire film from beginning to end, without a doubt. I'm giving this an 8 because of Mikey. Okay? He does, James Jude Courtney, he does an amazing job. And the other guy who plays Michael Myers in the 78 sequence, he does an amazing job as well. All the kills are fucking brutal. Loved it. That's why I'm giving it an 8. I enjoyed myself a little too much.
Let me point out, you just gave Halloween Kills a higher rating than the original 1978 classic Halloween. And if you guys want to know why, go watch our review, because it's going to be a blast.
I know I did.
And that's the subjective part of your review coming in. I think that's completely fair.
Okay, here's a different kind of dynamic. If we were briefly, if we were to rate as which film is better, like as in structure wise of a story and atmosphere wise, I give the edge to fucking the original Halloween movie. Granted, I've already made my peace with what I've said before. But, you know, from
a purely subjective enjoyment standard, this film grabbed you differently.
My emotions fluctuate here and there.
Sure.
So,
and it's to be expected. Completely understood. Halloween Kills. If I can distill all of my feelings about it into one rating, keeping in mind that I think the original Halloween is an absolute masterpiece. I gave it a 9 in our review. Guess what? Black Lagoon canon. I'm changing it. I'm giving it a 9.5. I think that movie is unreasonably good.
What did I
think it's a masterpiece. You gave it a 7.5. I think the original Halloween prefigures all of the other slasher films that were to follow in its track after. It put together the tiny pieces of slasher films that were in its atmosphere, and it made it into something incredible and charged, and it was just a miraculous movie filled with just enough subtlety and just enough practicality. It's just great. Halloween Kills falls insanely short of that, obviously. I am not putting it anywhere near Halloween on a purely practical standpoint. The film, it doesn't have any of the innovation or the great scenes or anything even close to that. That's not what we're really thinking about here, though. A rating is a mix of your practical analysis of a film and your subjective enjoyment of it. That's why masterpiece horror cinema isn't always on the top of my list. Sometimes I just think films are a lot more fun than classics. Sometimes that happens, and sometimes classics are so good that they just outrank everything else. In this case, Halloween Kills. I'm giving it a 6.5. I'm giving it a 6.5. It is now Black Lagoon canon. Compare that to Halloween 2018's
Brian,
5 out of 10.
Hold on a second. I just heard something.
Are you okay?
Who's there? It must have been nothing. It must have been a book that fell over.
Yeah, we'll keep recording.
Yeah. What was I gonna say? I was gonna say something.
I was still giving my... Oh, Nick! Oh my god! It can't be. Michael. Michael. You've come home. We're sitting in front of the Shape, Michael Myers. This is going to be a riveting interview since Michael is famously mute and doesn't speak, only breathes heavily. While you're here, I need to ask, how do you feel about the famous franchise that kind of made your career coming to an end? Am I to understand that you're upset about it, Michael? Oh. How do you feel about interviews? Are you confused by technology? Are you threatening me with a knife even though you pose no physical threat to me? Interesting. How does it feel to have no power over somebody who's annoying you over the air because you don't understand the concept of Wi-Fi or a Zoom video meeting? Wow. Riveting stuff, guys. Michael, was social distancing for you just kind of like normal living?